Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, thanks for giving me a little bit extra time this morning to get this analysis put together for you. I had to write some new code to analyze some data that I was very interested in talking about to the western part of the United States, and this is one of the first bits of that analysis. What I'm showing you here in this map looks at the difference in total accumulated growing degree day units for the time period of May 1st to July the 14th when we compare 2019 to 2020. So any place that it's blue, like the Northwest or the Southeast, that is where 2019 was warmer during that time period and thus a greater accumulation of GDUs. But where you see red, which stretches basically from California to Texas up to the Great Lakes states and the Northern Plains all the way to Maine, that is where 2020 has been the warmer year. And I've started to think about this, how we've been accumulating this heat. And so I want to show you, I've been looking at these maps for a while now, and I want to show you the latest analysis I did. May 1st through July the 14th, we're looking at average temperature ranks by climate district. You can see that parts of California, Arizona, New Mexico, in fact, the four corner states in Nevada here, we are looking at a lot of that area having a top 20, a top 10, even a top 5 warmest time period here from May 1st to July the 14th, while the Northwest has been near average or in some places on the cooler side of things. Thinking about how this heat has come in, I want to show you a couple of other ways of looking at it. This is just looking at average lows. It does appear that over that time period, our overnight low temperatures have been very, very high. And what this has done to our diurnal temperature range is really keep it a little bit smaller than it normally could be because we've had such warm overnight lows. But that's not to say that we haven't had some pretty hot days in there. Well, we haven't really been able to just string together, weeks upon weeks of, 100-degree temperatures outside of parts of southern Arizona. But it's been looking something a bit like this. So for 2020, this is a new updated map that just shows you from the 1st of May through the 15th of July where we have had temperatures over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're looking here at the number of days. Now let's zoom in on the western United States. Now there are 4 days in this analysis. And so we can see that down here in and around Phoenix, for example, that we've had in some places over 60 of the last 74 days that have had temperatures above 100 degrees. But look here in the Central Valley of California, and even look farther into the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, where those numbers have been, we don't have any up here. So it's been kind of interesting to see that. But again, let's compare this to normal. So this is average. Now the data that I'm computing this over is 1981 to 2020. That's the average, the data over which I'm doing this average. Zooming in on the West, honestly, we have actually seen in some places in here up to about 10 more days of having 100-degree temperatures or more. But outside of that, it's very normal in the Central Valley of California. It's been much above average, though, when you get down here into parts of Arizona. And it's been below average in the Columbia Basin, for example, and even in the Snake River Valley. So we're just trying to see where this heat's coming from, and I want to bring back some analysis I did midweek and show you these two maps blown up here. So for the western United States, which includes, so basically it goes from Arizona over to California, includes Nevada, Idaho, Oregon, Washington. Those are the states included in this analysis. We can see that we have seen an upward trend to the tune of about 3 degrees Fahrenheit since, over the last 70 years. So there's a pretty clear trend toward warmer afternoon daytime temperatures. And a very similar trend in overnight temperatures, although this trend is a bit higher. It is bordering on about 3.5 or 4 degrees increase. So we're actually warming at a greater rate with our overnight temperatures over the last 70 years than we are with our maximum temperatures. We just need to keep this in mind overall because this is pointing to basically hotter summers on both ends, both highs and lows. Okay, looking at the latest drought monitor that came out. When you look at it, you're going to go, well, what's really changed? Well, this is how much change we've seen over the last month. So if you want to go back and pause it and take a closer look here, please do that. But I want to show you the change map. Parts of interior Oregon have seen a degradation, but we've seen improvement in parts of Idaho and Montana, which we've been talking about quite a bit, and just some degradation and drought in parts of New Mexico and Arizona, and also in parts of Nevada and Utah as we've waited for the monsoon to get going, which it is most certainly going now. I also want to give you an update on reservoir conditions. Some of the reservoirs in Northern California, like Lake Shasta and Oroville here, are showing below normal reservoir levels, but around the rest of the state of California, things are looking pretty darn close to historical averages. So let's keep that in mind as well. We have not seen since July has begun much change in our soil moisture content, which is telling me that our evaporation stresses haven't been too high overall. But remember, our topsoil is relatively dry anyway this time of year. So to evaporate water out of something that's already dry, it can be challenging, especially in parts of the Southwest and Southern California. So as we look out over the next 10 days, I want to give you this broad view of the Pacific Ocean. You can just see the western United States over there on the right. A couple of things that I keep seeing here. You can notice that this plume of moisture here and this plume of moisture here seem to have a trajectory, something like this. You can almost see the flow around high pressure that's sitting here just off the coast. In fact, I'd like to watch that with you. So this is an animation from the European model out the next 15 days. You keep an eye on this high pressure cell, which was parked close to the west coast. It retreats south of the Aleutian Islands and then builds back at the end of the month over here. That's sitting right squarely south of the Gulf of Alaska. As it meanders to the west and back to the east, it's going to change our temperature and precipitation patterns, of course, across this area. And what I want to stress is one of the most dominating factors in our pattern is this large area of very warm water here. We've seen water temperatures try to cool off along the coast, but they just can't make a major change over to cooler conditions, primarily because of how warm parts of the North Pacific are. And that's really influencing our weather patterns as we progress through, well, the middle and end of summer and then into fall as well. Big questions loom on whether or not this La Nina will ever get going. While the trade winds now have picked up strength, are we going to be able to replace the surface warmer waters with some cool water from beneath? And will this ever get going into fall? Is some of the big questions we're going to be trying to answer throughout the rest of this summer. So let me take you out to Saturday the 25th, and let's just again see the flow pattern. What we notice is we keep breaking off troughs that kind of come around that ridge at the surface there, and they come into the northwest here, which is going to prevent the northwest from really going over and staying hot. Why I'm showing you this is because this is a far cry from what we've been seeing in past summers, where instead of having trough features in through here, we've actually seen huge ridges, with high over low pattern that flows something like that, which has set us up with Santa Ana winds, which has set us up with major fire threat. And it's not that fire threat is low or non-existent, but it's just not the pattern that in the past has really shut us down. You see, the jet stream is still quite active here in the North Pacific. There's a subtropical branch here, and they're kind of meeting in the northwest United States before running up like this over a larger ridge that at times keeps sitting here and moving itself back to the west. So mainly the flow pattern remains unblocked, but the jet stream is north due to all that heat in the North Pacific. So getting into the near-term forecast, the animation we're watching, well, we all know about the fires that are going right now in parts of the San Joaquin Valley, and it's really degraded air quality across much of the Central Valley of California. And the animation that we're watching here just takes us out over the next 48 hours or so, showing us where that smoke is going to be in California. So you do have air quality issues in California to be dealing with here in the near term. But the Northwest right now, not seeing a whole lot in terms of wildfire activity, and that is, of course, critical as we move into the end of the month of July. Now, in terms of precipitation, as we've been talking about a lot this week, with this large high-pressure cell sitting here and it's moving to the west with time, we have certainly turned on the southwestern monsoon, and you can see it here quite well when we look here at the precipitation forecast over the coming 7 days. Things are relatively dry in the Pacific Northwest, but over the Sierra Nevada here, I just want to show you a pretty amazing satellite animation just as yesterday, midday until the sunset. That's why it gets dark at the end here. If anybody can get me a picture of this, I would love to see what these storms look like blowing up here off of the Sierra Nevada. That would be pretty amazing. And I know this animation goes pretty fast, but you can see the fire that we're actively watching down here right in through this area. Notice the smoke toward the end of the day beginning to spread there. So we're going to keep a close eye on our fire threat in Southern California as we move forward in this forecast. As I animate out the operational European model, you're just going to notice here the flashes of green over the southwest. That would be the monsoon getting going, as you saw here. But really the story is just where this high pressure cell just sits off the coast. If I just take you back and walk you through it, anything that comes through comes over the edge. And while we do see at times here, chances for scattered storms as we move out into the next couple of weeks across much of the Pacific Northwest. There are chances for those storms, but the only concern I have is there's a few pretty windy days that will be showing up here in parts of the Pacific Northwest. And with some drier conditions, we could see some increase in our evaporation rates. But still, going all the way out to the end of the month, do you notice it? The flow pattern of the atmosphere isn't blocked, and it's just keeping the jet stream north. But these troughs here, the overall just sag southward on those lines is preventing major ridging from happening out west, which would shut everything down and get super hot, stagnant, and give us those Santa Ana winds, which would really increase fire threat in California. So looking out to week 2, July 21st through the 24th, the action's going to come around that flow pattern here and sit up from, the Canadian prairies into the north central United States. But look over here at the action. Oh, that's great. Seeing the southwestern monsoon really starting to crank up here. So with that retreating ridge that's setting up here and moving to the west, we're going to get that flow around it, and it's going to be exactly what we want to be seeing this time of year. I would just say that if you're down here in Arizona, New Mexico, where you see these increased precipitation anomalies toward the end of the month and then into the month of August, let's keep an eye out for that flash flooding situation setting up here in the desert Southwest. Now let's go over to that discussion on temperature again, and now let's look at it over the next couple of weeks, but starting day by day here. Another hot one in and around Phoenix. We can see we're expecting upper 90s in the Sacramento Valley, and then lower 100s as you get down into the southern part of the San Joaquin Valley. Meanwhile, still near average to slight cooler than average weather in the Northwest. And as we play this forward, watch how things change over the weekend. So this is into Saturday. We see, again, pretty warm temperatures here in the Central Valley of California compared to normal, but nothing extreme in the Northwest. The hot day comes in on Sunday and into Monday here for the Northwest. This is just while the first trough sweeps through the Central Plains. But again, we're bordering here on 100 degrees in the Central Valley of California, but we're finally getting up into those much warmer temperatures here, around the Tri-Cities down here in parts of the Columbia Basin and southern Washington. But because we haven't had a lot of these days, this isn't that outrageous to see this. So there's our hot day on Tuesday. So some real big heats coming into the Northwest. But as we then progress to next Wednesday into Thursday, what we notice is a cool back down as that trough reestablishes itself. So days 6 through 10, while the Northwest does kind of carry a bit of a warm bias, it's not super hot. It's warm, but not hot. And then as we look out here in the European, we see actually much closer to normal temperature anomalies there. And beyond that, the West just really seems to be avoiding a lot of extreme heat moving forward. But as I presented to you at the beginning of this, remember that the average now has been increasing. So to see above average temperatures does mean we'll probably get quite a bit of triple digit heat in the Central Valley of California, at least upper 90s, but finally seeing a changeover to more normal summer weather here as we finish July and get into the month of August. So let's talk about that longer term as a way to finish up this video. We see the brand new European Weekly Outlook for August. They're wanting to paint a very warm western United States. But how they're doing it is they keep bringing this ridge farther back to the west and just allow the heat to really build in. And it's really failed to do that a lot. So when you look at this, I would not expect the western United States to spend the month, 5, 6, 7 degrees above average. I do expect it to be near average and slightly warmer than average, but to be that much warmer than normal would require a much bigger ridge out west, and the models all summer long have failed to do it. So we've got something to be watching here, and I will keep you updated on this. But you've seen me paint this picture a lot from the European model, and it just hasn't yet fully materialized as a major heat wave. So let's watch it together. I'll keep a close eye on it over the weekend, report back to you next week on Tuesday what these new long-range outlooks look like, and we'll go from there, okay? Have a great weekend. And remember, if you can get me some pictures of what those storms look like blowing up on the Sierra Nevada mountains, I would love that. We don't get mountains where I live. I'm in Illinois. Our local mountain ranges are called overpasses, okay? So I'd love to be able to see something like that, and hopefully soon when the travel restrictions kind of ease, I'll get out there to California and get out and talk to some of you folks, and then also see some of the beautiful storms you do have popping up on the Sierra Nevada. Okay, that's it. Have a good weekend. Thanks.